What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Marvel Pair Up, your Disney Plus and film history show, where we take every MCU Disney Plus series and pair it up with the genre that it's being influenced by, whether that is Hawkeye and Christmas movies, or Moon Knight and identity crisis themed movies, or WandaVision and sitcoms. This time it is Miss Marvel and the coming of age teen comedy through the decades, from the 50s all the way to whatever we're calling now the tens. People don't like when I say the aughts, but that's what the aughts were, and now we're in the tens, and y'all can suck a lemon if you don't like it.
We're back in the 20s now. I don't know.
It'll be good for your iron if you're a pirate and fighting scurvy. As always, I am your host, Blake Schultz, and with me is Jamie Gerard.
Hello.
And Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
And we are here for the, what I thought was awesome, incredible, marvelous, dare I say, Miss Marvel finale, where we got a great resolution to the show, and all these little Marvel people who just want to eat up what's coming next. You've got your little tease at the end. We're setting up some stuff. You don't know where it's all going. Well, we know where it's going now. It had everything. I just keep feeling these Sam Raimi vibes in it. She stops a car with her powers, and I was like, it's like the webs in Spider-Man. I love it so much. Whenever we do it, I'm just a dumb, stupid sucker for it. What did you guys think?
This was my second. I love this series. It has now launched into my second favorite series of these Marvel series so far. I still like the episode before the best, but this is, I think, one of the best final episodes that these series have had. Even as much as I love WandaVision, I have a lot of issues with that finale for WandaVision, whereas I feel like this is probably the most pitch perfect finale I think they've had. I love how this opens with her whole family sort of finding out and knowing, although they already sort of found out because speakerphones, which is great. But I love the small reveals where it's like, cool, we're still going to tell this story for Kamala, but we're going to give you a few moments here or there. As a person who is the 90s kid, hearing that those X-Men chords made me lose my shit. I was on an airplane when I watched this, and I was like, wait, what? I had to shake the person next to me, like, what the fuck's wrong with you, sir? It's like, it'll be okay. And then obviously getting the post-credit sequence to sort of lead us into the Marvels was great as well. But I think my favorite part of this entire episode was the gifting of her outfit from her mom. Like that hit me in the throat, started welting up a little bit. I was like, oh crap, Jesus. Yeah, so that was really well done. It's one of the few times where I know we never really get to see how folks, except for Iron Man, we never really get to see how folks get their outfits that kind of just given to them and whatnot. This one meant a lot. And I know in the Marvels, I've seen some background stuff where she's wearing a different version. I do hope she comes back to this outfit because it has way more sentimental value. But yeah, that part was the cherry on the top for me for this entire series.
Yeah, I loved it. I will admit, I will still rank it number 4 of the Disney Plus series. I plan to do a full one sitting binge on Tuesday. I'll have a better idea.
You're a Christmas girl, so deeply. I know Hawkeye's.
I'm a Christmas girl, and I'm just desperately Loki's my favorite man in the MCU. So WandaVision, Loki, and Hawkeye are so high up there for me, but I also deeply loved this show and everything about it. But this finale, I especially loved the family stuff, the fact that the family were instantly supportive, and not only the mom with the costume, but the dad kind of sharing about her name was just all so beautiful.
It's the other part that got me. Yes.
Yeah. And we've never really seen that, like a whole family like this before, and it really hit me hard watching the family watch her fight. That was it really added a layer of they're supporting her, but they're scared. And it changed that whole dynamic of what that fight was. In terms of mutants, fuck yeah. I think that people who are upset that she's not an Inhuman, it's I don't care. They're the same. Inhumans and mutants.
The Inhumans had their chance in an ABC pilot, and you didn't watch it.
There literally is a word difference. They're literally
that's it. And Doctor Strange already confirmed that they exist.
The Inhumans no longer matter.
But Doctor Strange already confirmed that the Inhumans exist in the multiverse, so who
Correct.
cares? Like, it's not like they're saying that they don't exist. I'm just like so over this whole canon bullshit, whatever. Like when he said mutation, of course I lost my mind. It's like so exciting, and I can't wait for Comic-Con next weekend to find out what's coming. Like everyone needs to just chill the fuck out. But I loved the finale so much, and I can't wait to see her back. And I'm also like, I wanted a Brie cameo, and I thought it was perfect. I love that we haven't seen them meet yet. They're saving that. I like that it was quick. She didn't steal the show. It was a fun little thing. I thought it was the perfect way to bring her in. I just loved it.
I wonder if it's just going to be a scene from the Marvels.
That's what I was wondering.
I think that is, because it would be very weird and jarring to just start Captain Marvel 2 in Kamala's bedroom.
Yeah.
Like they would just be like, hope you watched it.
Well, they're already doing a pretty wild job of saying, you better watch these shows. If not, F you, we're not doing anything.
And it's I could talk about this episode and this show and the state of the MCU, specifically television shows, for quite some time. But I overall loved it. Second favorite, I thought we stuck the landing. I did feel that there were some threads from the first 2 episodes that we sort of just kind of let go. And I think this gets back to what I've been saying of like, we're kind of sanitized in the MCU. Like the bully just comes around and is an ally now. And the guy who we all thought was going to be the new Ducky is just on the page with everybody. And I was like, there wasn't really a lot of like interpersonal conflict. We just sort of like dropped a lot of that stuff to fight the cops. And I think one of the main things I want to talk about is I see a lot of like, who was the villain? I'm like, well, this was a show that had a lot of villains, because it started out just being like, the villain is the parents. I want to rebel against the parents. And then the villain was the clandestines and this other world and that. And this is the cops. The villain is, there's a much bigger, a friend of mine at dinner today, when I landed, it said this, where he was like, a lot of people don't like or can't fully grasp when they're the villain in something they're watching. And he's like, I wonder if it's hard to reconcile, or that they don't fully see what the show is trying to do, and going like, one, we're setting up mutants who are always on the hunt. There were always cops. They're always subjugated. They're always been discriminated against in the comics. We're dealing with a woman of color who is discriminated against and fighting against things, and we're dealing with somebody with superpowers, and we have an infrastructure that's going, get into school no matter what, and get the kids with the powers. We got to figure this out. And that rings very true to today. And I'm like, I think they kind of did something more complicated than we're really giving them credit for, by both sort of being like, does this woman from Damage Control know about mutants and is trying to figure out Kamala?
It's interesting because she does a throwaway line when she's talking to the cop at the very beginning, where it can either be racist versus her ethnic background, or racist towards her being a mutant. But either way, it is something where she's like, basically calls them, she used almost a term like "you people" in reference to
people like this get powers, is what she says.
And it's and he looks at it like, wait, what? And
he calls it out.
But if we aren't, now that we do know that she's a mutant, we don't know which one of those she's. Either way, it's intolerable and hatred, but could go either way.
Yeah, and I think we then sort of had a very good like Magneto Charles Xavier parallel by them giving Cameron abilities and him just kind of going ballistic with it.
Yeah.
And I think that showed a very good dichotomy in the struggle that we're going to see with mutants and with Kamala and with this show, and where the MCU even goes from here. I think we've sort of talked about the state of it a lot, and this is the phase of grief and the phase of moving on and the phase of seeing our old heroes ride up in the sunset and new heroes come up. But this is also sort of becoming the phase of like conversations from Civil War coming back up, of like, well, what do we do with all of these unchecked people? And it's getting even more complicated. And there isn't anybody doing anything with it, and it's actually the perfect time for mutants to show up and kind of re-spark this, like, well, the people we trusted are gone,
Right.
and so now what? And I really liked that, and I really liked the stuff with the parents and getting her name and learning Miss Marvel and the suit that we talked about. But I just, there was a part of me that was like, people I don't think are really paying attention to this finale and all of kind of the, like, for everything we sort of tossed out, that I was like, man, I really wanted a scene where he just went full Ducky and was like, I liked you, and I thought this was more. And for every piece that we didn't do that was more like teen rom-commy, we did a lot of like stuff that I don't think we've done that really kind of challenged the shows. But something else that's interesting to think about that I cannot take full credit for, I saw TikTok about like why all these shows, because I've said it on our podcast, I'm like, all of it's, I'm starting to see the math. We have these 2 episodes that are very character focused, a 3rd episode where we present the main villain or conflict, a 4th kind of who knows episode. Then it always feels like we wrap up the story in 5 and we do the climax, which I was like, Miss Marvel as a show was done in episode 5. If the main conflict was the Jen and this other dimension, we were done with it. This is the epilogue.
Correct.
And this TikTok brought up this great point of like, all of these shows were either in production, being edited, or being written all at once. And that's why you have these stories suddenly of like people watching WandaVision on the set of Miss Marvel, and Sam Raimi being like, yeah, I didn't even see the finale for for WandaVision because like we had to start rolling cameras. And I wonder how much of that is A, they were trying to kind of do a lot at once, and B is like, one day we're just going to figure out what the plan was before COVID. One day some leak or somebody's just going to come up and go, look guys, I get it, phase 4, some people like it, some people don't, but you got it, like here's what we were doing, and then oops.
I think that's what a lot of people are going to have to realize. Like, I know people have had their hate or love with phase 4. They've been saying the word mid has been passed around a lot for phase 4, and I think
we got to toss that word out. Like,
people have to understand that, one, we don't live in a fantastic or awful type of world, but 2, you have to give a little bit of leeway for phase 4. This occurred during the pandemic. Most of the writing and directing for the majority of these shows happened during the pandemic, and some shows like Falcon and the Winter Soldier was deeply affected by this. Like, a lot of these shows had to completely change their structure, how they were plotting, how they were doing anything, and they had to kind of move on the fly. And Marvel's good at that. Marvel is really good at moving on the fly. And most of the time you don't notice the threads, but this might be one of those times where, considering how much volume has been coming at one time, that some of those threads are kind of like sticking out a little bit more than they normally would be.
And it is even also a weird thing. Like, we had to get Disney Plus off the ground. They were going to crank 10 of these things out just to be like, there's content on the app. Which, like, I'm overall enjoying it. I don't have any complaints. I just think there's a lot of context around those conversations. But man, I'll tell you, my last note on this finale, my absolute favorite scene was, I wish I could remember his name, but he's also in No Way Home and he's part of Damage Control. When he figures out what happens and he just gets on that phone, is like, don't talk, listen. You went in without word, pack your things and go. You know what happens next. We pick you up, you're done. And I was like, ooh, good. We have a good person in Damage Control. That was dope.
I would like to shout out that he just got an Emmy nomination for Succession. Watch Succession.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was glad that character came back just for like funsies. And then when he had that scene, I was like, bring him back for everything. That was
because now
give that guy some more stuff to do.
Well, what I do love is that gives you the good and the bad within Damage Control, so that can lead, as you said, it's an epilogue, but it's also sort of the starting point for when we get to this mutant kind stuff. You're going to have people that are in police force or at FBI who are on both sides of that line, which is going to be fun to watch, considering
we're going to get especially if one Secret Invasion comes. I was like, I think this universe, like, say your mid comments now, because right now we're just kind of having a good time. It is about to get bonkers.
I think
It
Secret
is
Invasion
about,
is what I'm most excited about of all
yeah,
the things that we
same.
know about. Because next week we better get that Scarlet Witch solo movie announcement. But for in the meantime, Secret Invasion is what I'm most
Oh
excited about.
yeah, I think Secret Invasion. Everyone's like, "What are we building to?" And I'm like, "Y'all, there's a show called Secret Invasion. It's right there."
It says it.
Like, you think Nick Fury's not going to come back from space and be like, "This is fine." That dude is going to come back, and we're not going to let him swear. But if he could, he would just be like, "What the f- is going on?" He's going to get on the phone with some powerful people and be like, "Get your shit together."
Yeah.
And then we're going to get mutants, and then we're going to get Kang, and we're going to get the FF, and it's all, we're going to have our big, dumb, fun Avengers 5. You just got to let this thing cook for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. I thought it was a very good finale. I was a little bummed out about some the fun things I thought we were going to do, but we did what we always do with the Marvel shows, which is at the end we go, "Hey, it was fun playing genre for a while, but this is a superhero
But
show."
Marvel.
Like that, and that's
Yeah.
fine. We did the same. I was my same complaint with WandaVision, where I was like, "What a creative, innovative, fascinating show," and then we just threw multicolored balls at each other for 40 minutes. And look, we also had a great conversation about the ship of Theseus, and that's my shit. But then we also just shot head lasers at each other. And I was like, I get it. I got it. Like, it's fine. I know what I'm here for. I also want the dumb lasers. I want both of it. I wanted all the intimate moments of Spider-Man No Way Home. I also wanted the Green Goblin to scream, "Can the Spider-Man come out and play?" I do want my cake, and then I would like to eat it. But that is not all we're here to talk about. We also need to close this long, long history lesson with the 2010s. Oh, the 2010s. What a time. The 2010s, I actually, looking back, I often said, and I'll skip 10 and 11 because who cares? I was finishing film school and nothing mattered. But 2012, I often say, changed from what I was taught in school, which was basically like trilogies are great. And if you're going to make a TV show, have 2 or 3 seasons. And then 2012 was like, listen, if you're not doing some Avengers type shit, get out of my face.
Yeah.
We don't want trilogies anymore. We want universes. And if you're not doing some House of Cards stuff and proving that streaming stuff can happen, Kevin Spacey's problematicness aside, that show did that and Arrested Development, and there was another Netflix original right before that nobody ever talks about, but it happened. The thing that nobody thought was going to happen happened, and Netflix originals exploded. While that was happening, Game of Thrones was getting into gear. I think we were a year away from the Red Wedding, maybe. That was fandom erupted in the 2010s. That was really when I started being like, oh, Hot Topic used to be where I would get band t-shirts and chokers, and now it is Iron Man and Rick and Morty.
Yeah, like
and
Orange is the New Black.
Cersei.
Orange is the New Black blew the hell up on Netflix.
Yeah.
In the mid 2000s.
And between Tumblr and Twitter and these middle of the internet days, everybody was wearing their fandom like a personality, and you were all about it, and it altered everything. The Dark Universe was going to come out. The DC Universe was going to be amazing. The Transformers was going to cross over with G.I. Joe and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Hasbro was going to have a toy universe. All of these things that never were and never will be, hopefully, in some cases. Tom Cruise, The Mummy notwithstanding. But in that, we saw a resurgence in the teen rom-coms. And as we have talked about many, many times, where the 80s changed how we did movies because everything was accessible, and the 90s allowed more teen movies because there were your Tarantinos and your risk takers making giant movies, and film was going to home video, and you could make all of these movies and get closer. And the 2000s was parodies. The 2010s was the dawn. The streaming wars had become immortalized and completed in 2020 with Peacock and HBO Max and Paramount Plus. The prophecy has come true, and we will all give dollars a month to the studios, and box office numbers will no longer matter because they'll just keep going. And in that, we got the same thing we sort of got in the 90s. Suddenly, Netflix could take risks on smaller genres. their algorithm and formulas allowed them to go, this wouldn't do great at a theater, but these 13 to 17-year-olds are going to eat it up, and they're the people that we need to keep subscribing. So pump in The Kissing Booth, All the Boys I Loved Before, these giant movies that exploded and changed the game. But something else also started in the 2010s, and that was the decree and the cry for inclusion and diversity in storytelling. And therefore, we have 3 specific movies to talk about. We have Booksmart, we have Love, Simon, and we have Plan B. And that's all the talking I can do straight. Somebody take,
Well,
I'm tired. I've been on a plane all day. I've been up for 13 hours. Y'all, you know.
There were some options for teen movies in the 2010s. I mean, we've got Haley Steinfeld and Edge of 17. We've got all these Netflix movies. But I wanted to focus on these 3 because they're very queer. And still pretty well. Love, Simon and Booksmart are still pretty white, but Plan B, we finally have some leads that aren't just white. But something that we never saw before were queer characters and queer leads. I mean, when, like we talked about Bring It On last episode, and you know, one of the cheerleader guys does kind of get to be gay. You know, they make it clear that he's gay, and he gets a little flirtation with a guy at the end, and it is positive, but like, you're not getting kissing, you're not getting that experience. And Booksmart is one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. I deeply love Booksmart. I think it's so smart and so well written, and just the scene where, you know, we've got this awkward lesbian teen who just has no experience, and then all of a sudden she's in the bathroom with like one of the hottest girls in school, like, and with the most awkward encounter, but then later, like, it still works out and it's cute. And there's so much of Booksmart that's rich. And then Love, Simon is you know, I'm not a big fan of, like, you know, coming out stories. I think that they're kind of overdone. But in terms of like Love, Simon, I think was one of the first and best like coming of age, coming out dramas. It's one of the few dramas, you know, on our list that, you know, it sparked a television show. I have not watched the show, but it was powerful enough that like we're still telling that story of that universe. And then Plan B is what I wanted to pick because it is very similar to Booksmart. They have very similar like, jokes and themes. But I think that it's an important one to discuss now. One, because we do have queer characters. We have leads who are not just white, and the importance of what we're talking about right now in the world, where, you know, we're losing access to abortion and these rights. And this whole movie is about these 2 teenagers who are just trying to get a morning after pill, and it's very hard for them to acquire one. And I think like the message of that,
early in the movie, a man stops them blatantly from getting one when he could go the other way.
So but there are other, like, you know, you brought up Kissing Booth and To All the Boys, and I love To All the Boys. I think they're charming. I think Peter Kavinsky is one of the best teen rom-com leads in years. But yeah, I think we're in a nice resurgence, and a lot of that is because of streaming. But I'm glad I got to see Booksmart on the big screen because I had an amazing time.
I also saw Booksmart and the screening. Is also one of my favorite films in the last like decade. It's funny because you said that like they're all white, but I do think it's important to know that like for Booksmart, it's 2 women, so that is still a different than what is typical. And Love, Simon does have there's a pretty eclectic
supporting cast.
The main lead
for
is white,
sure.
but there's the supporting class is pretty much African American. So it's a bit of mix in there. So I think that's why these all sort of stand out. Why? Because I do think they allow, all 3 of these movies allow for this sort of the similar stories that we've had back in the day. Like the blueprints is still there. Like Booksmart is, for what it is, a by the books, romantic / coming of age comedy where we know the friends are going to get into an argument at some point in time. They're going to go to a party. That's the end game. They're going to get angry at a party, and they're going to be friends again, but separate their lives. But they get to tell that story now through the eyes of women who are also queer, or one of them is like, so that's very important and gets a new representation on life for these coming of age stories, which is why, while they may not be making the money because nothing is outside of the superhero movies, they are now giving a voice to people who did not feel like they had a voice before, which I think is very important. Love, Simon's the same way. I watched Plan B today, and it very much is like another Booksmart. It's like if Booksmart and Blockers had a baby. That's what Plan
or didn't have a baby,
or did not have a baby. And that's what Plan B would be. I love road stories. Anytime I tell a road story, kind of give it a bigger for two ethnicities that might who just would normally not be given the ability to have that sexual liberty and that story being told, because both of those folks come from a background that kind of hide that. And I love those movies and how they sort of end with both parents sort of just taking them in, and like dad takes his girl back in and just loves her. It's like, hey, I don't care where you were, I don't care what was happening, you're back now, that's all I cared about. And just his note of saying dope pin to her as he walked away, I was like, oh, she was so afraid of coming out and not telling her parents because he's super religious. He was like, that's cool, that's a dope pin, and just walked away. And then same way with the other daughter, mom, she was so freaked out, and mom just like, just come to me, like, let's just have this convo. And like they talk it out, just like, I need this. And she's like, cool, let's go get it. Like that's those are the
she felt very
that,
much like Kamala's mom in terms of like she's afraid of how she's going to react, but in the end she's still your mom, and she's
all been there
on your side. Yeah,
but like kids, your parents are like these gods, these icons, you don't think of them as the same person as you are, and then all of a sudden they're like, I've been in the exact same, and I wish my parent had done what I'm doing for you now, so let's go and get this. We never need to have this bridge between us again, just tell me what's going on and we'll get through it together.
No, I completely agree. I think you're right. I think the big thing whenever we do more
Blake's in a new location. And
yep, there we go.
having,
I was like, I saw at that time. I caught Terrence was drinking that bottle longer than you would normally drink that bottle. No, I was like, whenever with all these movies have the similar theme that we're talking about of inclusion and diversity. And I think it's interesting that when we get to things like Booksmart is the best example, where so many people, and they're not wrong, of being like, oh, it's super bad from a different point of view, but that different point of view makes it original again. And I think that's again, come on now, come back, I only need a little bit more Wi-Fi.
How that's kind of how Black Panther was for a lot of us. That's for Black Panther was like that for my folks. Like, yeah, we've seen this origin story in some vein or before. And the same way with Ms. Marvel right now. Like, yes, this superhero thing with this has been done, but it feels so new and so different and so fresh coming from an eye and an audience now. I'll say this all the time, there's an entire audience who saw Black Panther in the theater who had never seen any of the other Marvel films before that. That was their first time, and then they stuck on from that point. They saw Infinity War, they saw Endgame, and they were like, well, I'm in it now. Like, let's do this. It's the same way that's going to happen for Ms. Marvel. There's a group of people who probably never watched this before because they're like, I have nothing to connect to with this. There's nothing that brings me into this. Now they do, and now they're kind of like, all right, well, I'm on board. Where's she going to be at next? The Marvels? I'm there. Count me in from this point on for life. And that's the good thing, because you want these shows and these movies to start being inclusive and start bringing more people in together, where no one at the end of the day begins to feel like that outsider or that outlier.
Oh yeah, and I was like, they're all just so good. Love, Simon was just a delight.
It really is.
Jennifer Garner, I want her to be my mom.
I know.
Yes, I really wish Disney Plus had their parental thing together before Love, Victor was released, because Love, Victor is good. It's really good. I just wish it wasn't only available on Hulu. And now they put it in a place like, because Grownish is now on Disney Plus, and those audiences are the same, like as far as like the TV-14, like, so there's no reason Love, Victor should be kind of isolated on an island by itself to Hulu. It should be on Disney Plus as well.
That started on Fox, right? Love, Victor
was originally petitioned to be a Disney Plus show, and then somewhere during the middle, it was like, we're going to put this on Hulu. It might be a little too adult for us, or Disney Plus. And then somewhere in the last year, Disney Plus was like, hey, we got way too much stuff. We should probably just go ahead and put a a toggle where we can
I
make this
think
adult
it's
or
time
not.
to just bring it all over.
Yeah.
Let's just
If we can have Jessica Jones and Luke Cage fucking on Disney Plus, I think we can have a couple teenage boys flirting with each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, I say just bring it all over. Put up whatever just do it. Tired of him that Hulu and that Disney Plus button on my Roku remote. I want one button, Roku.
Give me one button. That's all I need.
And I think this is the easiest one to connect to Miss Marvel because it is showing us a very. We've talked about this entire decade of genres to go up with this show, and it's what this show keeps doing differently. What we all keep loving the most about it is showing us a different point of view in the world. And I think that doubles up with this finale when people are like, I'm confused. Who's the bad guy? And it's like, oh, I don't know. The people with guns in the high school shooting children, that might be the bad guy. I don't have a list of evil, but if I did, that one would be pretty up on there. Don't do that. That's like,
it's so frustrating when you see like people like, typically white men, sorry that those are your people.
No, we're the worst.
That are like, that are like, I don't like this thing because I can't relate to it. So I'm going to review bomb it because it's not about me. And it's like, okay, first of all, if you can't see yourself in Ms. Marvel, like, I'm sorry for you because you are a fan of things. Like you love Marvel. That should be enough to make you to relate to her on some other level. But also I just watched, some of the Fran Lebowitz, Martin Scorsese documentary show on Netflix, and it's really good. I really recommend it. And Fran Lebowitz was asked about that, about like seeing yourself in stories that you're reading. And I wish I had the exact quote, but she was like, that has never occurred to me in my life. Like what I'm reading. And it's like, I want to be represented in this. She's like, if anything, I want to learn about other things. And it was just like, she was like, why is that even a conversation we're having that right. that we need to be represented in something? And it's like, and it's just the fact that people are so salty about it that they're going to go online and like purposely fuck up scores and stuff is like, it's just pathetic and gross. And I think the majority of us are all positive and loving this stuff. And like, fuck those people, I guess. But I do recommend anything that Fran Lebowitz says because it's always. Yeah.
It is that it's that very true thing of like, the Twitter's not real. Like it's just, these are just a bunch of people screaming into the ether because they're pissed off that the world doesn't look the way they want it to look.
Yeah.
And they're wrong and they're dumb and they're stupid. And I don't know. That's all I got to say on it. The show is great. It's like, I think it's still the highest Rotten Tomatoes scored one.
Correct.
So like, whatever, numbers are numbers. I don't care how many people are streaming it. I don't think that matters to Disney either because we're going to keep giving them our $6.99 a month no matter what happens.
Right.
They don't care. They're this machine.
I do want to make a note because I just looked it up and noticed it. Yesterday, season 3 of Love, Victor dropped on Disney Plus, and thus the other 2 seasons previously have also been added to Disney Plus. So as of yesterday, all 3 seasons of Love, Victor, the final season, including that aired yesterday, are now all on Disney Plus.
I need to watch that show. And that makes me happy to know that it's now on Disney Plus. I'm glad that you looked that up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that wraps this one up, guys. I mean, that's the rise and fall and return of the teen comedy genre. So it basically, if you want a quick synopsis, in the late 40s, somebody went, those kids have money and we should label them. And we did. We called them teenagers. And then Warner Brothers said, we have a script that'll speak to them, and changed the game forever with that. And in the 60s, we refined it. And in the 70s, we did different variants of it. And then John Hughes showed up and he did his thing for 10 or 20 years. And then we slapped an R rating on it. Then it died. And then we gave it diversity. And that's how the teen comedy went. There's a lesson there.
Before we close off, I want to know of all the things you guys watched for this podcast that you hadn't seen before. What is your favorite?
The ones that I had not seen before. Ooh.
Does something stick out?
Does anything stick out? I mean, most of these sadly I've seen. Not sadly, most of these I've seen already. So I kind of knew them all
I mean, Beach Party is probably the
Beach
one that
Party,
I haven't
like-
seen. That's
like-
Beach Party is the
me.
biggest mind fuck that I had.
Yeah, I'm
would say-
excited to watch all of those Beach Party
Yeah.
movies. So.
I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole.
That's easily the most just like I hadn't seen it and what the hell. But
yeah.
I mean, you know, it was a very weird thing. While Terrence and I both think of our real answer to I want to say this. I had a lot more fun going back to the older stuff. And I think a part of me was like, oh yeah, I've seen American Pie and Mean Girls
So many
a
times.
million times
Right.
that I had way more fun doing
While I had seen it before, I didn't really recall it. Rebel Without a Cause stuck with me way more than because I really had no justification to go watch that until this happened, and I was like, oh, this is a really well done flick, and made me kind of like, James Dean, Jesus, you were man, you could have been one of the ones, like the greatest things that we've had. Yeah, and I mean, and everybody in that cast.
I mean, that's who Elvis Presley wanted to be. That's what he built his whole career around.
I think for me, my answer is The Wood. I did not expect to deeply love that movie.
And I know you did. And I know you didn't because we've been busy, but make sure you go watch Dope because I think you'll love it.
I'm definitely going to, definitely.
Now, I will say what's funny is I think Rebel Without a Cause and Beach Party stuck out the most to me, but I think my favorite thing to talk about was the late 90s and the boom. I think like those were the movies I had seen the most, but just like really diving into why the 90s was such a different period of filmmaking was it still kind of amazes me when you're like, there was this weird decade where like we hadn't quite cracked superhero movies. The tent poles were things like Independence Day and like Tarantino and these other experimental filmmakers and Von Trier were just doing whatever they wanted. Like
90s was fascinating for me in that we had all of these coming of age comedies like She's All That and Clueless and Ten Things Up. But for me also, I had all of the coming of age Black films like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society. Like, so I had both of them sort of coming in at the same time, and I could kind of relate a little bit into like, this is just a fucking wild time for me.
Did we lose Blake again? There he is.
No, I'm back. I'm back.
Yes,
I'm back.
Blake
I'm
is
awake.
back with us
I
now.
promise.
Okay.
I think the one last.
Well, this one's
thing
been fun. It's just such a good genre.
I did, it's a good genre that has a rich history. And I did like that at the end. They were just like, hey, whatever we're going to say about these mutations, it's just another label. And I was like, this is great. This is just great. This has been good. I guess next will be She-Hulk and
which we have no clue. Yeah.
Who knows? And then what's going to be really interesting is actually post She-Hulk is when Comic-Con's in a week. But then we're out of this truncated production all at once. Like it'll be interesting to see what's next for Marvel's TV because we're out. They will have like learned from all of this. Like there will be, I don't know, other twists and turns and like weirder stuff, and it'll be cool. I'm in. I'm a sucker. But you can keep following the show. Leave us a review. You can follow us at Hollywood ADI, where we have our other podcast. Hollywood already did it for reboots, remakes, and sequels whenever they come out. Now that the summer season's pretty much done, Nope's going to come out in a week here, and then I think I'm at least then Wakanda Forever and Halloween round out the end of the year, and then I'm kind of done. That's 2022, I guess. Although I'm excited for all three of the movies that I mentioned, especially Nope. So we do that. And then Jamie's, of course, on Phase Zero at comicbook.com. And Terrence is on our YouTube channel with his trailer reactions, show reviews, and everything else. And I'm at, as always, Blake. Terrence is at Terrence Tatum. And Jamie's at Jamie Cinematics. And we will see everybody in August. Is that She-Hulk
August.
time?
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Later.
Bye.